So, what do you think, Sheetal? Shall we get some solar panels for our roof?
மா தண்ணி வேற இல்ல, வீடு எப்படி சுத்தம் பண்றது?
हाँ, पोल्यूशन के कारण सारे ही स्कूल बंद हैं दिल्ली में. My little ones are at home.
Hello and welcome to L is for Labor, your source of information for all things labor. This series takes you through the world of work in India. As a boiling summer hits much of South Asia, already beset by problems like drought, flooding, and rising temperatures, it is even more important to unpack how these issues affect the lives of the working class. In the coming episodes, we ask questions such as: are international debates on decarbonizing in developing countries still global north focused? Or what happens to the jobs sustaining poorer workers in the coal industry if we transition away from coal? And as gig workers deliver food in searing temperatures, should they have heat insurance? And finally, what do electric vehicles mean for workers and smaller businesses in the auto industry? We begin today's episode asking the question: so, what is a just transition? Now, the term just transition has a history which dates back to the labor movement of the 60s and 70s in the United States, post World War II. A marine biologist named Rachel Carson had just written a book titled Silent Spring. The book was a blazing critique of how pesticides, especially DDT, destroy ecosystems and wildlife. On the heels of a lot of citizen mobilization, the US banned DDT. Eventually, the Environmental Protection Agency was established. But the term just transition is usually attributed to a labor leader at the time named Tony Mazzocchi with the Oil, Chemical and Atomic Workers Union, or the OCAW. He critiqued Carson's book for not really explaining the working class implications of polluting industries, which he also attributed to class differences. Mazzocchi said that the health of the environment and the health of workers are inextricably linked. Soon, he demanded a super fund for workers in relation to polluting industries. This was to support workers rendered jobless by environmental protection policies, including aspects like their retraining and supporting their incomes. He was a leading figure in the passage of the 1970 Occupational Health and Safety Act. According to the ILO, a just transition means greening the economy in a way that is as fair and inclusive as possible to everyone concerned, creating decent work opportunities and leaving no one behind. The ILO also stresses the importance of social dialogue in its definition. Simply put, we need to remember the needs of workers, vulnerable groups, and other social and developmental questions as we rightly transition to greener economies. Whether you're grappling with water shortages this summer or watching construction workers in your city struggling with heat-induced fatigue, we know the reality is dire. Even the shows we watch these days, like The Expanse on Netflix, often borrow themes from the climate crisis. In this show, people called the Belters have their raw materials and labor exploited by the Earth and Mars. Now, let's unpack just transitions further.
And this is where we see a difference in framing of just transitions in the global north and the global south, especially in the global north, where the countries are already carbonized, which means that they have access to energy, they have access to all sorts of energy and electricity. What they are really thinking about is how do we transition our workers from these industries now. So their critical issue is how do we transition workers in, say, oil and gas or coal to some other industry? Because if we are planning for a fossil exit, then what will happen to these coal workers or oil and gas workers? But now, if we are talking about global south, we see that there's a lot of uncarbonization or undercarbonization. So our transition is not just about it's not just about transitioning away from fossil fuels for climate change mitigation issues, but it's also about access to energy, access to affordable energy, reliability of the energy sources, and about building infrastructure, about providing like basic amenities. So it's not just about decent job creation. Of course, decent job creation has to be done, but it is also about other developmental needs that should go hand in hand. If I can think of an example, I can say that Republic of Congo, it is heavily dependent on oil for its economic growth. So close to 50% of its GDP comes from exporting oil. And now a sudden decline in this kind of an industry for a country like Congo will have major impacts, not just on the workforce, on the economy, but also in how do they build a new economic base. They need to have some kind of resources to even build a new economic base. So it is for Congo to decide and plan its own pathway to a just transition rather than what UNFCCC or different COP priorities have.
So it is apparent that just transitions are not simply about transitioning to less polluting jobs, but also posing big questions like, if not for fossil fuels or coal, where do we get our electricity? Or in some cases, our export revenue? Global South states also may have different considerations than Global North states. Let us look at coal as an example in the Indian case.
So coal in India is concentrated on the eastern states in India, mostly Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, Odisha, Telangana, West Bengal to some extent, and also within these states there are certain regions that are entirely dependent on coal. So there are entire districts that have been formed out of coal. Because you have asked me in the context of India, most of the coal mining is also public sector owned, which means that these companies also have obligations like social obligations to provide education, healthcare, and other basic amenities and basic facilities. If I can recall, I was in a mining district, not coal mining, but it was a iron ore mining district that I was in, and it was being run by a private company. And you see that when the mines are closed, the company moves, and so the schools shut, the hospitals shut, and all of these things happen. So it's like you have these social welfare amenities only till the time the mining exists or the company exists, and then once the company retracts, everything else also goes away with that.
Most Global South states are also grappling with the issue of an exceedingly diverse workforce, much of which is often not unionized.
Coal is a very deeply layered sector. So there is a wide spectrum of employment relationships and labor conditions that exist in the mines and even around mines in general. So at one end, there are the formal workers. These are permanent employees who are hired directly by the companies, and they enjoy regular wages. They have job security. There's access to healthcare, housing, pensions, and other social security benefits. And in most of the cases, these are workers who are unionized, and they're unionized under strong central trade unions. And then we have a very large number of contract workers. So these are workers that are hired either directly by the company or through contractors for specific jobs. So sometimes they may perform same tasks as the permanent staff, but often not with the same social protections. They can also be working in mines, like underground mines, or they can also be working in transport or other maintenance activities. And then beyond this, there's a very large, substantial group of informal or casual workers. These are workers who are majorly involved in loading and unloading or ad hoc seasonal kind of work, or per piece work is what most of these informal workers work in. And they lack all sorts of social security or bargaining power. In most of these cases, we see that workers are not unionized. Majority of the cases, workers are not unionized. Even in countries like South Africa, Colombia, where there is a huge number of informality in coal mines, we see that these workers are not unionized. And same is the case in India as well.
So we can see that while just transitions are imperative in moving towards greener economies, there is much more to them than simply moving workers from one place to another. In her 1974 science fiction novel, The Dispossessed, the author Ursula Le Guin contrasts a capitalist world and an anarchist world, also exploring their larger political economies, coupled with questions of justice and equitable societies. One of my favorite lines from the book goes, "To use the world well, to be able to stop wasting it and our time in it, we need to relearn our being in it." Le Guin's words are a good reminder that given the scale of the climate crisis, it is obvious we must act now. But extrapolating from Tony Mazzocchi's protestations in the 1970s and bringing that into present day, it is apparent that it is necessary to include workers, unions, and larger deliberations about sustainable development pathways into these conversations. After all, if there's anything that we have learned, it is this: no conversation is complete without asking the question, so what does this mean for the working class?
The migration story.